Today, we are working on self-sabotage. And in this episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you the paradox and the tension between like growth and expansion and wanting to stay the same. And I'm going to explain to you what are the roots of self-sabotage. And I'm going to explain this in the context of our mental bodies, our emotional bodies, our physical bodies. And the reason for this is because when we're growing and expanding, feeling wobbly, feeling like, that tension is pretty normal. And it's also where we need to learn how to take care of ourselves so that way we can hold the life that we want. And the main problem that we're solving here is that when self-sabotage happens, the first place people want to go looking is in their mindset. And when oftentimes that's actually not that's cause in business, this looking to solve problems and like the wrong aspect of yourself, you can just spend tens of thousands of dollars in years kind of on like a wild goose chase. And so I'm going to explain to you when I'm working with clients what I'm looking for, and so that way you'll have some perspectives on these things. So let's get started with the paradox. So the paradox of growth and expansion is interesting because human beings we're both like a divine creature who has a soul, and the soul wants to grow and expand. The expansion is part of what makes us feel really alive. And we have this little squishy human animal who really loves what's familiar. The mind loves what's familiar. The emotional body loves what's familiar. And even the physical body loves the comfort of knowing that you can survive. When we're growing and expanding, we have to take our human self with us. And so there's a tension that's created there, right? And this tension of like your soul kind of pushing outwards against, your nervous system, your mental structures, your emotional structures. When we try to either grow too fast or when we try to grow and we're not willing to really look at ourselves and support ourselves, this is the place where we will get in our own way. And what I want to point out, and I think a more compassionate way to look at self-sabotage is really around self-protection, because sometimes our minds are so ambitious that we forget, uh, how to really care for ourselves in these things. When I'm working with my clients, so, currently I'm working only with clients who are business owners and who are scaling their businesses. Sometime next year, we're going to reopen some of my other offers to help people at different places. But currently I'm working just with people who are scaling. It's an interesting place to be because we're building this external business structure. And when we're scaling, we're trying to get that external business structure to be bigger and to make more money and to hold more responsibility, hold more people, employees, clients, customers, whatever else. And that means that in order to be able to hold that bigger business structure, that we also need to grow and expand on a personal level. All right. And so anyways, let's just get into it. All right. So let's talk about I'm going to go over 3 different like kind of root causes of self-sabotage in this episode today. And then during the rest of the month, we will go over like other various aspects. So let's talk about mental. All right. So as we're growing and expanding, our mind loves what's familiar. But oftentimes when we are creating something when we're scaling our business, for many of us, this is going to be the first time we've ever done this. So we don't have any mental structures or experience around that. Now, I just want to point out that that's going to make your mind uneasy. And that's just the way that minds are. There's nothing wrong with you. And what I notice happens is that the more that your mind is in brand new territory, the more that the doubt is going to come in or it's going to wobble. And it's not because you don't have faith or anything like that. It's just like your mind is like, dude, I don't know what to do here. I've never been here before. I'm learning this as we go. Right. And so what I'll notice when people's minds are really uncomfortable there is that sometimes they'll doubt, sometimes the mind will find reasons for you to not do the thing, right? Because the mind can't handle the discomfort of not knowing, what's going on. Sometimes I'll see clients with like what I would call more of a mental block, and it'll be more like they can't imagine the thing that they would need to imagine, or their mind won't cooperate, or they get so fixated on the plan and the how that they like can't or won't hold the vision of success. They get so like fixated on how would I make this happen that they can't get their mind to lead their state, because the mind leads the body, right? And so if you were to take your thoughts right now and think 100 thoughts of beautiful and, beautiful thoughts, you're going to feel different. And oftentimes when you change your state, new thought patterns open up to you because those neurochemical cocktails just change things on the inside. So when it comes to mental self-sabotage, you'll very likely hear it in your mind, and it will make sense. It will make sense. Like it's so interesting because whenever I always, when I offer the work with people, they're essentially committing to a whole year of growth and expansion, which is an uncomfortable place to be, to make that decision. And it's interesting because when I talk to people and I say, all right, well, here's the price, here's how I work. Do you want to work with me? A lot of times I will listen to all of their reasons why they should or why they shouldn't. And it's just fascinating to me. So if we're going to be self-protecting, mentally self-sabotaging, what's really going on there is that you're asking your mind to do something brand new. It's uncomfortable. And then the mind is going to bring up all of your doubts, all of your perceived inadequacies, all of the things. Your mind is going to tell you all the reasons why it thinks that you shouldn't do it. Now, at that point, that's your place to decide, are these things true? Is this relevant? Does this matter? Can I outgrow this? Can I choose to think something else? And growing your mental sphere does require a skill set. What I think is the mental is usually the first to get on board. The mental realm is the first to be like, yes, I want this growth. I want this expansion. I want the big money. I want the big responsibility. I want the significance, because the mind also has our ego, which loves some significance, loves to be important. So if your mind is, imagining, not cooperating, not able to do the things, then there's some skills that we want to work on. All right. So one is, we need to realize that we command the mind. And if you could make your mind picture an elephant or sing happy birthday to you any day of the week, then you have the ability to command your mind. And what this means is that you're going to have to choose your thoughts. You're going to have to observe where your thoughts are going, and build that mental discipline. And really, I find that like learning how to shift your perspective, which is one of the skills that I work with my clients on, is like, how do we move our perspective to see the same thing from multiple different angles inside of our own minds? Oftentimes at this level of the mind, we're going to have to learn how to rework our mental structures. That might be remove a belief, remove a judgment, add a new point of reference, give ourselves the information or the education that's required at this level. So again, I just want to reiterate, mental blocks I find to be the easiest. I find that the clients can move through those the fastest and like with the least amount of trouble. And I do want to say here is that I'm going to get into the next two flavors of like root cause self-sabotage. And when we are unaware of that, oftentimes what people will do is dig around in the psyche thinking, there's a rumor out there that's like everything is mindset. And I'm like, it's just not true. And too much attention, too much of your attention, your own energy and your mind can actually create mental drama, because then your mind has the energy to create labyrinths, delays, conditions, obstacles. We have to remember, minds love a problem. Minds love to be the hero of solving a problem. And so when we have too much energy in the mind, oftentimes there's just going to be problems. I'm going to just say that because oftentimes when we're not solving the other two problems, what we're doing is we're adding more and more energy into the mind, which is its own I don't know, a little flavor of fuckery there. All right, so let's talk about the emotional body. So the emotional body is used to a certain, like, I call it an emotional temperature, right? So like, let's just say in my everyday, day to day, I have this set kind of range that I'm used to living in. And on the low end, it will go from like annoyed, right? Like, I don't know, sometimes I'm a little resentful, but on the high end, I might be thrilled. I might be in sheer enjoyment, in states of bliss, right? But there were years where my emotional temperature, on the low end, was going to be despair, desperation, rage, resentment, and on the high end might just be like a less stressed, right? And when I was coming from those places, the emotional work was different than it is now. So we all have like an emotional kind of temperature. And it's important to start with like, well, where am I usually feeling? Because sometimes when we start to feel really, really different, even if it's better, it's like our body isn't really used to those sets of neurochemical cocktails. And so those emotions may feel too much, may feel intense, and may even trigger things like, oh, the other shoe's going to drop. I shouldn't get too used to this. Let me do something to get back to my regular feeling state, which may be things like, I don't know, start a fight with my spouse, you know, not do something important that I need to do so that way I can feel a little bit bad about it, right? So what I notice when we're growing and expanding, one of the aspects that needs to grow and expand with us is our emotional range. Now, I've done many episodes on emotional range, so I'm not going to talk too much about that in this episode, but that emotional range is our ability to be with high sensation, right? And so when we can't handle big sensation, what happens? Most of the time we're going to resist, right? And so when I'm talking to clients, resistance to me most of the time is going to signal uh an emotional like flavor of self-sabotage, self-protection. Now what's really going on there is your emotional body is saying like, you want this thing and this is going to change my temperature drastically. And so this resistance, and now also I will say, if you have a lot of fear of sensation, if you're afraid of being judged or afraid of being criticized or afraid of being seen as a failure, afraid of being disappointed or disappointing people, right? These are all fears of sensation. And so if you don't have the emotional range, that fear of sensation is going to come up when it comes to take action. And so you're going to feel a lot of resistance. So resistance for most of the people that I work with has a feeling, right? And so for me, when I feel resistance, I feel it on top of my chest. It makes me want to like chain smoke cigarettes, even though I don't smoke. But that's like, I'm just like, oh, I make a weird face. I like put my shoulders up. I look like a hot dog. You know what I mean? But when resistance is in action, it might be things like being too busy, forgetting your passwords, getting disorganized, procrastinating, not doing, the thing that you know you need to do. It might be finding reason, again, making reasons why this won't work or what, which again, like I'm explaining these mental body, emotional body, physical body, like they're separate, but they're all in one, right? So they play on each other. And so we want to make sure that you understand, what does resistance feel like in my body? What does this emotional resistance feel like? And what are the ways that resistance shows up in my behaviors? This is going to really, really help you to understand yourself, right? And so what do we do when like if our emotional body is the root of why we're not doing something, why we're not taking the action, why we're not, growing and expanding, I think there's really a couple things that we can work on here. So one is, the way to expand your emotional range is to learn how to feel your feelings. And that process is really a 3-part process. So one need to have sensation-based awareness, right? And this is very different than story. And I want to just point that out, because a lot of times when people are when they're thinking they're feeling their feelings, all they're really doing is they're having a story about their feelings. And that's all happening in the mental realm. That's not happening in the emotional realm. It's not happening in the body. And therefore, the mind just does a real shit job of processing emotions. All right. So we need that sensational level awareness. So now what we're going to do here is, you're going to feel the sensation in your body, and you're going to pay attention to the sensation moving through your body. So you have the 3 parts. You have the sensation itself, you have the attention feeling, the body based, work, feeling the sensation. And then you have the mental part of yourself paying attention, right? And this creates emotional alchemy. And this also creates self-trust, because for most of us, our minds have been trained to leave when we're feeling our big feelings. And so in Tantra, there's a concept called the inner marriage, but basically the mind holds the masculine for within yourself, and the body's going to hold more of the feminine. And so when you're feeling big feelings and your mind checks out, it's like a self-betrayal essentially, right? Because the emotion requires both to be able to move through. And so when our minds won't pay attention, when we go and we scroll or we shop or we eat or we do drugs or we have sex or whatever, we numb ourselves to that sensation that we're having. what ends up happening is that sensation just stays in our body and then can be triggered down the road. We need to learn. So if we want to have that big emotional range, we have to learn how to feel our feelings. And what this also does is this helps to create self-trust. So when you don't trust yourself, like, self-sabotage is fundamentally like a lack of self-trust. Because what you're saying is, I want to grow and expand, and your human animal is saying, you don't have me for that. Like, you don't got me. Right? You want to put me in a situation where I'm not going to know what to do, where I'm going to have feelings and you're not going to hold me, where my physical safety may feel in danger. And even if it's not, because sometimes like you may have a physical response to like speaking on stage or, a post going viral, things like that. So, when your soul's like, I want to grow and expand, and your body's like, well, I don't have, you don't got me for that. And it's really like, I'm bumbling because it's a kind of nuanced and complex, but I'm just saying, like, that's the place where the self-sabotage, that's like, we're ripe for it, right? So it's like that tension between the wanting to grow and the wanting to stay small, right? That tension between the two. So the more that we trust ourselves, the more that we're going to be okay to grow and expand. Like, if well, I might screw this up, but I'll figure it out. That's a level of trust that you have in your mind. If your mind is like, well, I need a 47-step plan and I need to know all the steps, that's your mind not trusting. And the same thing with your emotions. The biggest thing that you can do for your emotional body is learn how to process your emotions, right? And so I teach a loving approval meditation. If you wanted to like learn more about this, Michael Singer has some great work. He has a book called The Surrender Experiment, I believe. And he's got an Audible presentation, I think, called Living from a Place of Surrender, Michael Singer. He's got some great work and what he teaches in that book and that training is essentially emotional range. He teaches it from a very different perspective than I teach it, but it's essentially the same thing. Also, Carolyn Elliott in her book Existential Kink talks a lot about sensation. She's really coming at it from a place of more shadow integration and patterns. But either way, the practice of EK is also a practice that helps you to expand your emotional range, and it helps with awareness, and it helps also with like bringing a little humor to it. So, you know, so this is what we have to do to expand that emotional body. Now, when we think about our physical body, so I want to be very, very clear about this. This is going to be important. The level of success that you have is directly proportional to what your nervous system can handle. And when I say your nervous system, I'm talking about your body's ability to feel safe. That's really what I'm talking about. So all of the talk about nervous system regulation, all of the talk about nervous system capacity, what we're really saying is some of us can only feel safe in a really small set of circumstances and anything else feels dangerous. Some of us can feel safe in a much wider aspect. And so this is going to be capacity also go into your energy levels and your rest and things like that. Like, so if you want more capacity, having a good night's sleep, good meals, wearing clothes that fit you, that feel good, getting outside, getting some sunshine, these things all help your body know that she's safe, that it's okay to thrive, right? When we do things like hold our pee all day or forget to eat, this makes our body feel like we're not in a safe situation. And so that also really contributes to the contraction. So if we want to be expanded, what we really have to do is teach ourselves how to feel safe in bigger and bigger sets of circumstances. And so the skills required for this, I like to call it body attunement, because I think all day our body is giving us signals. Like, our body's giving us cues to go to the bathroom or eat food or drink water or go for a walk or wants to dance or, is feeling heavy or sad or different levels of energy. And because we live in a culture that so highly values the mind and the masculine, we often do that at the cost of the body or the more feminine aspect of ourselves, that embodied aspect of ourselves. This is, again, a place of self-sabotage. So when you're saying, you can push the body to a certain point and she'll go with you, right? You can be like, all right, well, we're going to skip lunch and we're just going to get this thing done. I mean, you can do that. But if you do that all the time, what your body's learning is you're asking for more of what's not safe, and she will fight you on it. And so I find that like really physical based self-sabotage might be things like getting hurt, getting sick on the day of the presentation, those kinds of things. And listen, I'm going to point this out too. You have to really pay attention to yourself. Just because I observe this in the clients that I've had, and I doesn't make it true across the board, right? It's not 100%. These are just based on my observations. And I want to just be frank with that, because you getting to know yourself is going to be the real thing. And so if you find that what I say isn't true for you, great. Well, then take notes on that and start, you start to figure these things out for yourself. So these three areas, our mentality needs to expand. We need to be able to think. We need to be able to hold bigger areas of mental landscape. Our emotional body needs to increase. And our physical sense of safety also needs to increase. Body attunement, you know what else I wanted to say here? Sorry, I got distracted. So body attunement is the process where you're paying attention to your body and you're making sure that your needs are met. So like I said, going outside, eating, drinking, walking, getting your feet in the grass. So when you're attuned to your body and you're making sure that she's got what she needs, you're going to be able to feel safe more. The other thing is practiced states. So the reason why visualization is so important is because a visualization basically takes us in the mental world to the place where we want to be, our expanded state. And then we have the chance to feel the emotions that come from that state. And we also have the chance to feel the physical state of that. And so when we're trying to hold bigger and bigger things, practicing those states helps your body get used to feeling those kind of feelings, right? And if you take yourself in a really wildly, let me just tell you a story, give you an example. So when I first started my business, I made like $50,000 my first two months of business. And so I remember I had like 50 grand in my bank account, and that was the kind of money that I was used to making in a whole year. And it didn't feel good. I hadn't really visualized and practiced what it would feel like to hold that level of abundance. So when I got that level of abundance, it actually triggered a lot of feelings of unsafety. I was afraid that I was going to lose the money. I was afraid that my kids were going to get kidnapped. I was afraid about a lot of things because now I had all of this big financial potential, but I wasn't all the way ready to hold it yet. And so doing things like practicing our state, like doing the mental exercises to shift our state to this place even before it happens, helps our body get used to this new, these new sensations, these new neurochemical cocktails, and learn how to feel safe. And if you can feel safe in a visualization with money, it will very likely hit a little different when the real money comes in and it's really being experienced. But the more that you can make it normal to you, where it just feels normal, 50 grand in the bank is just normal to me, the less likely you're going to be to self-sabotage. All right. So these three bodies of ourselves, right? And they all need to grow and expand. Right? And so just because you want something and just because you have a strategy to get it doesn't necessarily mean that your mind is going to be all the way on board, or your emotions or your physical body are going to be all the way on board. And so the tension between these places, this is generally where when this is just the place, like this is the work, this is the place where if we don't have everything kind of organized, it's not organized. If we're not gently taking care of ourselves, this is where it gets fucked up. Right. And then what's the worst there is then we sometimes people will internalize that, like, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I tried this and I failed. And it's like, well, yeah, well, now you're in a whole different place. So I just want to reiterate here, we are growing and expanding and it's hard. And so when it comes to self-sabotage, the better solution is often going to be to go a little bit slow, to be gentle with yourself, to take good care of yourself as you go and do these things. What I find to be less effective and cause more suffering in the long run is to just beat yourself up about it, right? So, I'm procrastinating. Let me whip myself about it. Or, I feel resistance around this. There's something wrong with me, right? Sometimes that entire situation, that's another thing that breaks the trust within oneself. So it's like, if you want to have a really big thing, you have to trust yourself. You have to trust your mind to figure it out. You have to trust your body. Your body has to trust your mind to make sure that she's safe, to make sure that she has everything she needs. Your heart has to trust your mind and your body. And you have to trust yourself that you're going to be able to take care of yourself in this new situation. And oftentimes where people get stuck for so long is that instead of just gently caring for themselves and giving you what you need. She beats herself up. She criticizes herself. She uses the mind to whip the body. She uses the mind to whip the heart. And it's like, that doesn't exactly work. It's not that it could never work. It's just a heart. It causes a lot of suffering. The thing that I work with people on is growing these business structures in a way where we have the time to enjoy our lives, the time to take good care of ourselves, and not just hustle, 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 right? There's no need for that. You can get rich by working incredibly hard. You can. And there's plenty of people who do. But I think the next, like, I feel like feminism 2.0, I feel like a way of creating financial abundance in a way that also creates time and space for lifestyle abundance is actually like the move. And so that's the work that I'm doing with my clients inside Limitless Wealth. This sort of work around like learning how to tenderly care for ourselves is really core and fundamental. And it seems like it's slower, but it's not. And I want to just point that out because as you're tenderly caring for yourself and you're like, oh my God, I'm such a pain in the ass, like, meh. But as that self-trust comes on board and then all of a sudden you have the emotional range to do things, that expansion can happen so much faster, even though in the moment it seems slower than just pushing through. Right? Because sometimes when we're doing this expansion, the mind is going to be like, get your shit together, self, like just push it through. And you're like, and that can work a time or two. Like sometimes you do have to give yourself that little nudge. Sometimes you do have to like, give yourself the little push off the edge. But really, it's better to do this. And so to do it tenderly caring for yourself. So the mental side of self-sabotage is when your mind won't get on board, when your mind won't cooperate. The emotional side is going to be resistance, and that's generally going to be around actions, right? You're going to feel that. And then that physical thing is you will also feel it around actions. You'll feel it around judgments. You'll feel it around social structures. But the difference to me is that when your nervous system is at her edge, she's going to feel unsafe, right? You're going to feel unsafe. And so this is the place where sometimes you'll get triggered or you'll feel yourself get into a freeze state and really shut down. And that can be either or. And so I wanted to explain this to you because if you're feeling the physical sensations of self-protection or self-sabotage, we need a body-based solution. If you're feeling the emotional aspects, we're going to need an emotional solution. And if you're feeling the mental aspects, we're going to need a mental solution. And the main issue that I notice is that most people will spend years and years digging around in their mind when the problem is actually they don't have the emotional range to do what they want, or their body doesn't feel safe. They don't trust themselves with their physical body. So, all right, I hope this is helpful. I hope this gives you some context for understanding yourself as you grow and expand. And listen, I'm taking clients, and so if you want to work with me, if you want to have a conversation about how I can help you to grow and expand to your next level wealth in your business, you can go ahead. There's a link around here. And you can just go to book a call with Bree and we can have a conversation. And then, if it's a good fit, we can really talk about working together. So I love you so much and I will talk to you later. Bye, everybody.